On a gloomy night beneath the full moon, a woman with golden hair soars above the rooftops, her sharp gaze fixed downward as she whispers that the twisted game is over, calling out the name of her foe, egoistic. Below, a man cloaked in smoke and dressed like a magician smirks, clapping slowly as he praises her, mocking yet sincere, admitting she has once again performed as expected and proving herself a rival worthy of his acknowledgement. The heroine, Stardust, shouts back furiously, insisting she needs no recognition from him and ridiculing him as nothing more than worthless trash. With theatrical bravado, Egoistic leaps onto the nearest building, his voice booming as he calls her name, declaring that she has always been the one to oppose him, the one who constantly disrupted his carefully crafted games. He admits, almost wistfully, that it feels as though this will be his final match, because she has grown far too strong for him to toy with any longer. Rage flares in her chest as she clenches her fists, demanding to know what he means, but before she can receive an answer, his form distorts and transforms, levitating into the sky as he delivers a chilling farewell. He vows that she will never see him again before diving downward in what appears to be his last act. Her mouth falls open in disbelief, and without hesitation, she leaps after him. Her expression clouded with panic, her hand reaching desperately to grasp him. Egoistic looks back, genuinely bewildered by her frantic pursuit, questioning silently what this behavior means and why she reacts this way to him. The story then shifts back to the real world several years, to a time when a 22-year-old Kim Dae-in sits on the edge of a towering building, his legs dangling freely as he mutters to himself that the cityscape viewed from this angle resembles Seoul. Yet the chaos below tells another story. The streets erupt with violence as a lowly B-rank villain clashes against two C-rank heroes, punch and kick, their battle leaving destruction in its wake. Dae-in grips his weapon tightly, realizing this world is vastly different from the Seoul he once knew. Here, villains spread terror daily, while heroes with extraordinary powers soar through the skies. He has transmigrated into the pages of the superhero comic Stardust, and with a smirk, he acknowledges his resolve. In this reality, he will live as a villain, but only for one person. With a flicker of energy, he teleports elsewhere, but his earpiece crackles to life as a sharp voice demands to know what he is doing. Calmly, he replies that he merely teleported a moment ago and decided to rest briefly. Known as Egoistic, his villain rank remains a mystery, yet his name already stirs unease. The commanding voice scolds him for recklessly hunting villains without tension, but he answers with composed confidence, telling So-una that everything is part of a meticulous plan. Calling it a villain hunt, he explains that by using knowledge of the original storyline, they can strike early, eradicating troublesome villains before they grow too strong. He swears he will never allow those vile beings to torment his favorite character, Stardust, ever again. The commander informs Egoistic about a man refusing to move from the couch, uncertain of what he is staring at, yet convinced the moment is ideal. Laughing darkly, Egoistic springs into action, assuring the commander he will handle the stubborn rascal himself. He reflects briefly, fortunate that the abilities he has gained allow him to execute such a plan, the first being teleportation. In an instant, he materializes before the man, who recoils in shock as a gun is aimed at his head. The target is Rhino, an infamous A-rank villain. With a cold gaze, Egoistic reveals his second ability, telekinesis, and standing at Rhino's side, he delivers a chilling farewell. Grinding his teeth in rage, Rhino can only watch as Egoistic snatches the papers from his grasp, inspecting them with sharp curiosity before smirking, asking if they are blueprints of a department store. As anticipated, the truth is revealed. Rhino had indeed been plotting yet another large-scale terror attack. Egoistic contemplates grimly. In the original storyline, this very man evolves into an S-rank villain, a deranged psychopath hiding behind a rhino mask who slaughters hundreds without remorse. The commander's voice cuts in, urgently warning that the police and the Hero Association have already been alerted and ordering Egoistic to withdraw within 5 minutes. Egoistic thanks him, addressing the commander by name, So-una. But before the call ends, the man jokingly demands he bring back Malona as thanks. Hanging up, Egoistic turns his attention to the grisly scene, and scrawls words onto the glass wall with blood from a fallen victim, muttering that this message will serve as a fitting gift for her. Moments later, the heroine Stardust arrives at the devastated site, demanding confirmation from the officers present about the villain's identity. They confirm her suspicion. Rhino has been killed, the notorious A-rank villain eliminated, and forensics link this murder to the same mysterious figure who previously slaughtered Zodiac before disappearing. An officer even directs her attention to the bloody writing on the wall, boldly declaring it is meant for her. Stardust clenches her fists, grinding her teeth in fury, cursing Egoistic as a bastard, and vowing she will one day capture him, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, the news of Rhino's death spreads like wildfire, shocking the public. Citizens, frustrated with the inefficiency of the heroes, begin to hail Egoistic as someone achieving what official heroes cannot, a villain who hunts other villains, blurring the line between justice and chaos. Dayan panics in his room, shaking the television violently as his face twists in frustration, muttering that the situation is turning far too troublesome. His eyes flare white with fury as he shouts, when suddenly the door opens and someone steps inside. It is Han So-eun, the prodigy with a superintelligence ability, who remarks dryly that he has been mumbling for some time and that his shouting is unbearably loud, asking what could possibly be troubling him so much. Dayan turns toward her, seething, yelling that people are actually thanking him for killing villains, which only fuels his anger further. If things continue like this, his reputation will only improve, and he has no idea what will happen to the hero determined to hunt him down. Seo-eun approaches calmly, asking if he means Stardust, and Dayan roars that she is exactly the one. According to him, public opinion against her will only grow worse with each passing day, and to prevent this, he must stamp into the people's minds that he is truly, unmistakably a villain. Clenching his fists, he demands Seo-eun prepare something with him. Annoyed, she asks what nonsense he has devised now, and he points to the wall, declaring with a manic grin that it is time for his official debut as the villain Egoistic. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, an announcement echoes across networks, declaring that the spectacle on the 11th floor, the broadcast everyone has been waiting for, is about to begin live. Crowds eagerly gather, staring at their phones as the countdown ticks away, excitement buzzing in the air. At the final second, Egoistic's figure flashes onto the massive screens and countless devices, greeting the city with a chillingly cheerful hello. He introduces himself boldly as the villain Egoistic, stunning the public with his radiant presence, the bright light of the broadcast piercing their eyes. Mockingly, he tells them they must be wondering who he is, then proudly reveals himself as the one responsible for eliminating Rhino and Zodiac. He laughs coldly, dismissing the small talk, and directs their attention to a towering structure on the horizon. People scramble to change the channel, believing their remotes are broken, when an old woman notices the 127 tower outside her window. A young girl gasps in horror, realizing the building is frighteningly close, as Egoistic grins and announces that bombs have been planted at 2 locations. Terror spreads instantly as eyes widen in disbelief and fear. Inside the sealed tower, hostages pound on the doors, screaming that they do not want to die. Viewers at home tremble. One man vomits from shock, unable to process the horror. Egoistic's voice cuts through the chaos, declaring that the game is about to begin. He taunts them, saying every villain requires a hero, and in this case, the one responsible is none other than Seoul's A-rank protector, Stardust. Right on cue, she is already rushing toward him, her cape and mask cutting through the night. For the first time, Egoistic feels a nervous thrill coil in his chest, for he is finally about to meet her in person. Stardust descends in a brilliant flash, landing firmly before Egoistic, her presence striking like a thunderclap across the rooftop. He stares at her in astonishment, his cheeks flushed red, his eyes wide as he takes in the breathtaking beauty and commanding aura that feels even more overwhelming than he had imagined from the pages of the comic. Closing his eyes for a brief moment, his thoughts drift back to a dark alley where panic once reigned and people fled in terror. Dayan, leaning against a wall in that memory, gritted his teeth in frustration, muttering to himself in disbelief as he wondered where on earth he had ended up. longing desperately to return to his original world. Yet as he walked deeper into the shadows, a massive holographic image of stardust illuminated the side of a towering building, shocking him to the core. He froze, wide-eyed, whispering in denial that it must be a lie, unable to accept the impossible sight before him. Confusion rattled him further as he questioned whether this strange reality was truly Stardust's world. And when his gaze returned to her standing alive before him now, he felt the undeniable pull of fate. For one fleeting thought, he imagined that if he became a hero, he might stand by her side. But the bitter memory of the novel returned, reminding him that even as a hero, he could never shield her from the endless misfortune written against her. Knowing that to protect her, there existed only one path, his resolve hardened. Stardust breaks the silence, her voice steady yet sharp as she calls him by name, egoistic, and steps forward with measured determination. His hand instantly raises, a finger pressing against the remote in his grasp, halting her advance as his eyes gleam with defiance. With a smirk curling across his lips, he warns her to stop where she is, his tone laced with threat, making it clear she understands the weight behind his words. Every action, every scheme, every step into darkness has been for her sake, he tells himself, believing that by casting himself as the villain, she will be freed from the cruelty of her fate and allowed to walk only on a flowery path. Kim Dayan, a 15-year-old boy who once found joy in watching the show Stardust, sits eagerly before his television with all his snacks and preparations laid out. One day, as he watches an episode unfold, he mutters to himself that Jackie must be a true psychopath because even for a villain, his behavior feels far too extreme and exaggerated. Now, standing face to face with Stardust in this strange new reality, Dayan bursts into uncontrollable laughter, his mouth wide open as his voice echoes across the rooftop, while Stardust narrows her eyes at him in pure anger, her patience thinning at his mocking display. Egoistic gestures theatrically toward a massive screen that displays the terrified civilians trapped within the tower, his voice steady as he identifies his next target, deliberately setting the stage for a confrontation that mirrors her earlier movements. As Stardust arrives, he tilts his head in a mocking welcome, addressing her directly with unshakable confidence, proudly presenting the twisted theater he has constructed for their inevitable showdown. Stardust responds with fiery determination, demanding the release of the hostages and vowing to bring his defeat swiftly. Egoistic feigns compliance with mocking delight, announcing that he will unlock the elevator for the prisoners. Narrowing her eyes, Stardust senses the obvious deception hidden within his smooth words. Inside the tower, one desperate civilian rushes to the elevator the moment it unlocks, only for Egoistic's face to reappear across the screen, revealing the cruel snare hidden in his plan. With chilling satisfaction, he explains that if one building escapes, the other will be doomed, leaving Stardust cornered by a devastating moral trap. He grants them a strict 30-minute deadline before both bombs detonate, regardless of their choices, his voice dripping with malice. Taunting the hostages, he cruelly reminds them that the lives they would sacrifice belong only to strangers, then bursts into manic laughter, reveling in the chaos he has orchestrated for the entire city to witness. Stardust clenches her jaw, her fury burning as disgust rises within her at the sadistic ultimatum forced upon innocents. Through the unblinking lens of the cameras, Egoistic broadcasts his grand experiment in human nature, while inside the tower, panic erupts as frightened hostages argue, torn between sacrificing others or resisting their own doom. The moral weight rips them apart, some urging desperate action, while others recoil in horror at the choice thrust upon them. One trapped civilian stares helplessly, despair growing as hope fades, silently asking why Stardust has not yet saved them. Meanwhile, Stardust evaluates her limited options, realizing a reckless attack could trigger a hidden countermeasure. Her eyes blaze with cold fury as she confronts the villain, revolted by his ruthless manipulation of innocent lives. Yet Egoistic dismisses her rage with unnerving calm, instead offering an articulate and strangely respectful analysis of her ideals as a hero. His unexpected compliments leave her shaken, uncertain how to respond to such bizarre behavior, as he continues with a chilling monologue. Witnessing a hero of her stature rendered powerless is to him the true spectacle. A wicked grin spreads across his face as he declares her helplessness to be genuinely inspiring, his shoes glowing ominously as he extends an invitation for her to join his twisted game, offering her the chance to connect directly with the hostages who so desperately need a savior. He begins to teleport away, leaving Stardust stunned by the unsettling proposal. With a sinister grin, Egoistic explains that if she can inspire the captives to endure for 30 minutes, the bombs will be disarmed, weaving yet another cruel twist into his game. Stardust's suspicion lingers, finding his words impossible to trust, but Egoistic brushes off her doubts, pointing out coldly that this is her only chance to act. With a dramatic snap of his fingers, he completes the stage for her public address, forcing her into the role he has chosen. A swarm of drones and cameras whirs to life, beginning a synchronized countdown that signals the start of a broadcast destined to cover every corner of the city. In an instant, Stardust's image appears across colossal billboards, news monitors, and handheld devices, turning the entire metropolis into her captive audience. Citizens gaze upward in awe as her determined face fills the glowing screens, her presence carrying both strength and urgency. She begins her broadcast, her voice firm yet compassionate, as she delivers a message of hope and defiance directly to the trembling hostages trapped within the tower. From afar, Egoistic observes the scene with quiet satisfaction, his plan unfolding precisely as he intended. His role is simple: to be the storm that sets the stage for the heroine. All Stardust needs to do is radiate, becoming the beacon of light he requires her to be. Inwardly, he dedicates this entire performance as a spectacle crafted solely for her. Stardust's words flow with conviction as she urges the captives to endure, to stand united against despair, and to show the world their resilience. Her speech pierces through fear, awakening courage within those cornered lives. Across the city, strangers and victims alike feel the strength in her words, clinging to the fragile thread of faith she offers. A faint smile curves across Egoistic's lips, subtle proof that her success was woven into his design all along. Suddenly, the digital timer flickers violently, skipping down to its final 5 seconds. Tension ripples through the trapped civilians as they brace themselves for the inevitable, clutching one another tightly, desperate prayers spilling into the air. Stardust, her forehead glistening with nervous sweat, keeps her eyes locked on the screen, her expression unwavering, though her heart pounds beneath her calm exterior. As the final moment approaches, a mother throws herself protectively over her child, her eyes filled with terror yet resigned to fate, while elsewhere in the tower, a young couple embraces in one last, trembling moment of love. The countdown blinks to 0, yet no explosion comes. Instead, the drones fall silent, harmless and inert, leaving the hostages stunned, tears streaming as realization dawns that no one chose betrayal. Egoistic clutches his head in disbelief, his grand attempt to unveil humanity's selfishness shattered before his eyes. He stares down at Stardust, shaken by the unity her words inspired, while she stands with steady resolve, calmly refuting his cynical vision of the world. She declares her faith in humanity's inherent goodness, a belief that has just saved hundreds of lives. Egoistic, instead of seething, lets out an amused, almost joyous grin, struck by the unexpected truth. As Stardust charges toward him, determined to end his twisted game, he vanishes in a sudden burst of purple energy, his laughter fading into the night as he leaves behind a chilling promise that their next meeting will be unlike any before. On the other hand, all the citizens were cheering in happiness, their eyes filled with tears of happiness, cheering her name. On the other hand, look on with an empty hand. Somewhere else, Egoistic lands, trying to maintain his balance before falling to the ground shouting in pain, his whole body trembling as she mentioned with his trembling voice that he is dying. He further thinks the fatal side effect of his teleportation ability. He take physical damage proportional to the distant travel he continues to lay down on the floor, freaking out, realizing he probably won't be able to move for a couple of days, when suddenly his neighbor appeared mentioning that she told him not to wear that hat because he looked really layman. On the other hand, instead of being mad, he tells her that he is dying, asking her for a glass of water, but she rushes outside, asking him to get it by himself. On the other hand, Stardust grinds her teeth in frustration, looking at the people's expressions. She mentioned that thinking he had played with people's hearts makes her angry, and that next time she will definitely catch egoistic. But he did not know what was happening with him right now, as his neighbor was trying to pour water on his dead body. At the Korean Hero Association, a group gathers around a large screen flashing the latest media headlines, followed by an analytical report on egoistic. Park Jun-ho, the bespectacled president of the association, clears his throat and announces that they will now begin the briefing, but his assistant insists on first showing him images of victims. Park groans, rubbing his forehead, muttering that he has already seen those corpses a million times, and begs to skip it. The assistant reluctantly agrees, shifting instead to recount yesterday's incident. Apparently, the explosives had been attached to the outer walls of the skyscraper beforehand, smuggled in using teleportation. Forensic checks reveal they were high-grade, custom-built charges, powerful enough to obliterate the entire observation deck. Park bangs his head against the table in exasperation, demanding if the lunatic crafted them personally, then impatiently asks about any leads regarding the hijacked broadcast. His secretary admits nothing has been confirmed yet, explaining that somehow the villain bypassed cutting-edge security systems and transmitted his message, likely thanks to an absurd level of technical genius. Park frowns, questioning if the same person designed both the bombs and the broadcast hack, when the secretary adds that egoistic seems unusually fixated on Stardust. All eyes swivel toward her, as it is revealed he once left a message for her at a murder scene and even called her directly during this latest attack. Park leans in, asking her what kind of man he seemed when they first met. Stardust slams her hand on the desk, remains silent for a beat, then declares he is nothing but a deranged manipulator who delights in twisting people's minds, a mastermind of large-scale terror, and, without question, a villain. 2 days later, inside Dane's cramped room, egoistic lies sprawled across the bed, trembling in agony and whining that he's on the verge of death. Eventually, he drags himself up, shuffles to the fridge, and gulps juice straight from the bottle, only to choke and spill half of it down his chin when his neighbor So-eun shouts at him for the very crime. He flails defensively, insisting he definitely used a cup, but she glares daggers, unimpressed. So-eun, the girl next door with superintelligence, watches him with the expression of someone reconsidering all her life choices. Egoistic eyes So-eun with a mix of disbelief and amusement, thinking that this girl who keeps calling him Hung is, in truth, a genius hacker who, at least in the original comic, eventually becomes an S-class villain, though for now she's simply the sharp-tongued neighbor at his side. Out of nowhere, she yells, demanding if he plans to keep strutting around as though the place belongs to him, when in reality, he's freeloading in her underground hideout. He bursts into laughter, retorting that he's the one covering their living costs anyway, so technically, he has seniority. So-eun fumes, insisting that regardless of who pays, he should never drink straight from the bottle again, snapping at him if he understands. He grins mischievously, assuring her that he does, and even pats her head like a spoiled pet, which only makes her more annoyed. Before he can tease her further, she abruptly changes the mood, declaring they have a pressing matter, and grabs his hand, dragging him outside with the speed of a rocket. Soon, they arrive at her true base, where she plops into her chair before a massive screen glowing with streams of data. Fixing him with a sharp look, she asks if he remembers the woman she brought up before, Lee Soo-bin. He blinks, confused, and asks what she means, then recalls. Wasn't that the girl she said was prowling the deep web, the one who suspiciously seemed to be a fan of his antics? So-eun pulls up a live feed on her colossal screen, pointing sharply for egoistic to watch. The broadcast shows breaking news. A gang of so-called egoistic followers is in the midst of a terrorist assault in Incheon, holding hostages and rigging the building with explosives. Egoistic stares in disbelief, his jaw nearly hitting the floor, and blurts out, "Who the hell are they?" His panic spikes when he spots a masked woman among the crowd, instantly demanding if Lee Soo-bin is trapped inside. As the coverage continues, he bangs the table and turns to So-eun, asking what their guiding principle is. When she answers, he growls that it has always been forbidden to kill civilians. His dark red eyes burn as he declares he needs to wipe out these imposters, and asks her bluntly if she will back him up. She locks eyes with him, nodding in determined silence, while he mutters that he will decide what to do about the woman only after he sees the situation firsthand. But either way, he'll handle it with her at his side. Meanwhile, Stardust hovers in the smoky sky before the blazing building, awaiting clearance to engage. The commander holds her back, insisting she remain on standby until the police finish their fruitless negotiations, then finally issues permission to act, along with a kill order. Grinding her teeth, Stardust trembles with frustration, only to suddenly spot Egoistic himself storming the scene, which makes her heart skip. She realizes bitterly that, unlike most villains who rely on raw superpowers for terror, this man weaponizes bombs and hijack broadcasts to corner heroes, and his antics are dangerously effective. The thought that a copycat incident could erupt the very next day gnaws at her pride, fueling her anger further. Suddenly, the radio crackles again. The commander announces Egoistic is live streaming the entire chaos on YouTube and orders her to verify it immediately. Shock washes over her as she pulls up the site, only to find his stream. Egoistic filming himself walking straight into the hostage den. The gunmen whirl on him, weapons aimed, but then recognition dawns on their faces. This isn't some random bystander. It's the infamous Egoistic himself, dropping into their mess like a villain turned hero from his own stage play. The so-called followers erupt into wild cheers, chanting Egoistic's name, as one zealot blurts out that their lord himself will slaughter these ignorant humans, while on the other side of the room, Egoistic nearly collapses, his body aching viciously from the strain of long-distance teleportation. One thug notices his distracted look and calls out, but before anyone can react, Egoistic bursts into eerie laughter, his twisted amusement leaving the room frozen. Without hesitation, he pulls his gun, aims at one of the men, and shoots him dead on the spot. Chaos erupts as another panicked follower yells that this man isn't their master at all, claiming he must be a disguised cop. In response, Egoistic swings his gun toward the accuser, and in the blink of an eye, a wall of firearms is suddenly leveled at him. Grinning, he mocks them, proclaiming that, on the contrary, he has never had such delusional worshippers. At that instant, smoke pours through the building, sparking mass panic both inside and in the livestream's comment section, which explodes with disbelief. Outside, Stardust finally receives clearance to engage. Her mission is now to prioritize the safety of the hostages, and she darts into the burning structure at once. Meanwhile, Egoistic gets a private ping from Seo-eun, telling him that among the captives sits a woman dragged in against her will, uninvolved in the attack, Lee Soo-bin. In the corner, a terrified young woman hides, sobbing and begging for help. Egoistic strides over, yanks the mask from her face, and hurls it aside before asking if she has truly done anything wrong. Trembling, she admits through tears that she was wrong, repeating it in a desperate mantra. He smirks darkly, warning that if she keeps crying, he might just kill her, which leaves her stunned and shaking. Then, in a shocking turn, he lowers his head before the camera and apologizes publicly, declaring this atrocity is not his doing, but his responsibility, since his past actions inspired the copycats. The live chat explodes in disbelief. What villain apologizes? He continues, promising compensation to every victim, even offering bank transfers for the hostages, and vows the families of the 3 who died will receive the largest reparation possible. Inwardly, he frets they could trace the shell accounts, but reassures himself that Seo-eun will cover the tracks somehow. Watching from her station, Seo-eun feels faint, grumbling for him to grab the woman already and return. With a weary sigh, he hoists Lee Soo-bin onto his shoulder as she weeps, then triggers his teleportation, his body quaking violently under the crushing after effects. Just as the energy envelops him, a thunderous blast shakes the building, and he glimpses Stardust charging into the inferno, their paths colliding at the razor's edge of chaos. At Yonsei University, Egoistic still dominates every headline after his outrageous public apology, and a lone girl sits beneath the autumn sunlight scrolling the news on her phone. She is Shin Haru, a seemingly ordinary student, yet her stiff expression betrays the weight on her mind. At the crime scene earlier, Stardust had declared furiously that this time she would capture Egoistic no matter what, but he evaded her strike with a mocking grin and vanished in an instant. leaving only smoke in his wake. Back at her desk, Haru exhales, staring blankly at her textbook when her senior, Kim Chae, approaches with a friendly smile, teasingly asking if her assignment is giving her trouble. Haru shakes her head, insisting she's fine, though her thoughts clearly linger elsewhere. The truth is, Shin Haru herself is Stardust, an A-rank hero of South Korea, who hides her true identity with a perception-distorting filter during missions. To the world, she is nothing but another university girl, yet her secret is one that could shake the nation. Even so, her heart is troubled lately, and the source of it is none other than egoistic. She mutters softly, reminding herself that all humans act out of selfishness, but her frustration grows. Why then did he save the hostages? Just as her mind churns, Kim playfully pinches her cheeks, scolding her for wearing such a gloomy face. With a laugh, she claps her hands and insists they abandon assignments for now and get mango shaved ice, Haru's favorite treat. For a moment, Haru's eyes light up at the mention of mango, almost bouncing in excitement, until the image of egoistic flashes across her mind again, souring her mood so quickly, her senior nearly drops the spoon in surprise. Haru clenches her teeth, muttering that this mess cannot be fixed with mangoes alone, snapping her pen in irritation and snarling that the mango is hers. Kim hastily agrees, surrendering all mango rights to her with a chuckle, but Haru is already doodling angry scribbles in her notebook, vowing to expose egoistic's identity to the world. Kim only shakes her head, tugging her along toward the ice cream shop, bemused by her junior's childish fury. Meanwhile, in the heart of Seoul, an unremarkable house hides a secret. Step past the ordinary front door, and another reinforced door stands waiting. Beyond it, an elevator descends only when a hidden code is pressed, carrying its occupant down dozens of stories beneath the city. At the bottom lies Egoistic's underground fortress, his so-called ego base. There, the infamous villain reclines inside a capsule, smirking faintly as he mutters that, in short, this place is now his true home. Seo Yoon crosses her arms in irritation, snapping at Egoistic about why he dares to call someone else's home his own. He only smirks and replies that between the two of them, there's no difference. Her house is his, and his house is hers. She exhales heavily, muttering that his logic is nonsense and completely forced, when suddenly he playfully slams his leg against the capsule, yelping dramatically in fake agony. So-eun glares, scolding him to stop making ridiculous noises, reminding him that if he just stays still, his body will recover soon, and telling him to quit acting like a melodramatic diva. He begs her not to nag so much, groaning that teleporting with someone else hurts twice as badly, then lazily grins while praising her superintelligence ability, admitting that although it wasn't the reason he brought her on as an assistant, having her near a fatigue recovery capsule really makes everything worth it. Flashing a random thumbs up, he leaves her baffled, wondering what on earth he's plotting. Just then, Lee Subin strolls in cheerfully with grocery bags, announcing she went shopping because the fridge was completely empty. Smiling, she offers him a snack, but Egoistic jumps in shock, yelling if she's forgotten she's a wanted fugitive. She only giggles, brushing her bangs forward to show how she hid her face, but he freaks out even more, declaring that such a disguise makes her look even more suspicious. Before he can scold further, Seo-eun suddenly leaps towards Subin, startling him enough to suspect betrayal, until she calmly explains that she intends to use the girl as an errand runner. Teleporting in front of them, Egoistic demands why Seo-eun asked him to drag Subin here in the first place, and Seo-eun simply replies that she needs her help with something important to prevent another terror plot. Egoistic argues furiously that harboring a terrorist is madness, and demands any proof she won't start shooting in their own home. But Seo-eun sighs, reminding him that Subin was forced into the incident and never wanted to be involved at all. With casual mischief, Seo-eun repeatedly mispronounces her name before finally handing her a cup of ice cream. The girl stares wide-eyed, shocked she even knows her real identity, while Seo-eun licks her spoon smugly, saying she already knows everything. Calmly, she adds that Subin's parents were both researchers for the Han-eun group, her tone carrying the weight of secrets that even Egoistic hadn't yet considered. Lee Subin pales, stammering in shock, demanding how Seo-eun possibly knows such private details. Sewon calmly explains that Subin's deep web post had glaring weaknesses in its encryption, making it easy to trace. She presses further, asking if Subin still seeks revenge. Didn't she declare she wanted to retaliate against the Deuce members in the exact way her parents once suffered? Sewon goes on, confessing that she too is hunting the Han Group's leaders, having endured her own torment at their hands, and admits she believes her grudge will only vanish if she destroys them completely. With fierce determination, she asks Subin if she will stand alongside her. Egoistic watches, piecing it together. Subin, just like Sewon, is also a victim of Han. He recalls how he persuaded Sewon to join him by promising aid in her revenge, all while ensuring she never evolved into the dreaded S-rank villain she was destined to become. Yet this girl, this Lee Subin, never existed in the original storyline, which convinces him she's an extra, harmless, and without real impact. Still, he isn't sure whether she'll actually prove useful. His confusion deepens when the two girls suddenly embrace, sobbing together, their grief colliding like a storm. He stares blankly, wondering if he alone is unable to follow this whirlwind of emotions. Glancing at Seo-eun, he notices her tough male persona has completely unraveled, but rather than comment, he retreats wordlessly to his capsule, deciding silence is safer. The scene then shifts to a bustling restaurant, where a girl loudly sobs across from her companion, drawing every curious gaze in the room. She cries miserably, demanding why he is treating her this way, while the man across the table clenches his teeth, snapping that she's ruining his appetite. With irritation, he insists he only admitted he liked her a little. Was that really such a tragedy to hear? Suddenly, a uniformed officer strides into the restaurant and approaches the table, announcing a report of assault has been filed, and politely requests the man to come with him to the station. The man snarls, ordering him to buzz off so he can finish his meal, but the officer grips his shoulder firmly, warning that refusal will be treated as non-compliance and an arrest will proceed immediately. In the blink of an eye, both vanish, teleported to the top of a nearby building. The officer starts to explain they'll head to the station from there, but the man shifts behind him and kicks him mercilessly off the edge, mocking that he should go wait downstairs. As the officer plummets, the man's eyes glow crimson, and he sneers venomously, asking who such a lowly cop thinks he's dealing with. He isn't just anyone, he is Hak Chol, an A-rank villain gifted with the terrifying ability to teleport at will, and his hunger for chaos has only just begun. A bizarre beast towers in the middle of a ruined building, other monsters thrashing wildly around him as he taunts his opponent, asking if killing him will somehow fix the world. He calls the figure facing him Stardust, none other than Han Seo-eun, the infamous White Witch, once an S-class villain. Yet back in the present, Seo-eun is far less ominous, shrieking at Eagle's cheek because he gulped down all the orange juice. At just 16, her favorite obsession is juice, and her fury is legendary when deprived of it. Lee, busy washing dishes, quickly apologizes, admitting she finished the last drop and promising to buy another later. Before tempers rise, Seo-eun throws her arms around Lee, soothing her with a hug, and both girls end up laughing. Egoistic, however, narrows his eyes, grumbling that her wrath is clearly reserved only for him. Out of nowhere, he smirks and asks if she's finally done pretending to be a boy. Seo-eun's cheeks flush crimson and squeaks like an embarrassed kettle and yells at Egoistic, whose cackling fills the room. The scene cuts to their hidden base, where both girls tinker furiously at computers while Egoistic watches. His gaze lingers on Lily, the last survivor of the Han Group project, where horrific human experiments were once carried out on hundreds of children. The project ended when one child's unstable power went haywire, killing everyone involved, everyone except Lily. Barely alive, she dragged herself from the wreckage and hid underground, building the hideout that now shelters them. For years, she supposedly lived in isolation until Egoistic found her. He still recalls their first encounter, Seo-eun trembling with a fork in hand, ready to stab him like an overcooked steak, while he stood calmly, offering his hand, saying he came to help, not harm. In the original storyline, her thirst for vengeance twisted her into an S-class villain, doomed to die. Yet now, looking at her, he wonders in disbelief if she is already a villain, given she is technically his accomplice. Determined to steer her away from destruction, he studies her intently until she suddenly spins around, cheeks puffed, demanding to know why he's staring. He swiftly averts his eyes to the other girl, thinking about her mysterious background. Orphaned after her researcher parents perished, she supposedly secured admission into a prestigious university through sheer grit. Her major will be computer engineering, and she appears destined to handle Lily's cyber warfare. Still, what baffles him most is not her origin, but her jaw-dropping cooking skills. She can whip up a feast worthy of a five-star restaurant with the same fork that Seo-eun once waved like a weapon. Suddenly, Seo-eun clears her throat, announcing she has completed a detachable location tracking sensor. She hands it to Egoistic with a straight face. He stares at it, baffled, before asking dryly why on earth she thinks he needs a glorified villain GPS. Seo-eun clenches her jaw in irritation, demanding if Egoistic has already forgotten their main mission, reminding him that the device is for tracking the villains he listed for elimination, specifically Hak Chol. Egoistic snaps back furiously, asking why on earth she picked a teleporter of all people, ranting that Hak Chol can blink infinitely across short distances without any drawback, making him maddeningly slippery since even psychokinesis can't hold him down. Seo-eun calmly argues that the more troublesome the opponent, the quicker they should be handled, but Egoistic throws up his hands, whining that she has no idea what it feels like to have his body screaming in pain every single time he teleports. She dismisses his complaints with sparkling enthusiasm, ordering him to quit whining and get to work. Later, as sunlight spreads warmly across the skyline, Egoistic sits perched dramatically on top of a tall building, gazing down at the city like a discount gargoyle. He turns to Seo-eun with a smug grin, asking if they're finally ready to move out. Seo-eun stares at him in disbelief, shocked he still hasn't gone inside, and tells him to hurry it up. He shouts back indignantly, demanding if she really expects him to teleport straight into the villain's living room like some pizza delivery guy, grumbling that Hak Chol might actually be in there sipping tea, waiting to blast him on arrival. Seo-eun exhales in exasperation, reminding Egoistic, for what feels like the 100th time, that he must fire the location tracker simultaneously with his gunshot, since even if Hak Chol dodges the bullet by teleporting, the tracker will still tag him. Egoistic glances skeptically at his weapon, muttering how that's even possible, and Seo-eun snaps that she engineered it to be faster than a bullet, though he wouldn't grasp the explanation anyway because he's just a liberal arts major, so he should stop whining and go. Still uneasy, Egoistic wonders aloud if it wouldn't be smarter to confront Hak Chol in the street, but Seo-eun explodes, yelling that Hak Chol only teleports indoors and never exposes himself outside, and that this strategy was carefully crafted after her thorough research. Both girls sit at the computer monitoring him, with Lee cheering encouragement while Seo-eun joins in, their enthusiasm making Egoistic awkwardly thank them before announcing he's starting. He teleports into the villain's living room, startling Hak Chol instantly, and at Lily's urgent command, he pulls the trigger, firing the tracking devices. A bit later, he shouts in panic that he missed, demanding to know if the trackers still latched on, and Seo-eun yells back that they did, ordering Lee to feed her the coordinates. She relays that Hak Chol is 500 meters east, and Egoistic acknowledges before teleporting, only to freak out as he materializes in the middle of a crowded street. People immediately recognize him, screaming and snapping photos, flooding social media with proof, while Egoistic realizes with dread that this disaster was never part of the plan. The scene shifts to Yonsei University, Lecture Hall 303, where students listen quietly until Stardust suddenly receives a dispatch from her commander. Egoistic has appeared downtown, and she must mobilize. She bolts upright with a loud exclamation, startling her classmates, then apologizes hurriedly and grabs her bag before rushing out. Moments later, she's on the rooftop, launching into the sky with clenched teeth, muttering bitterly about whatever absurd stunt he's pulling now. Meanwhile, Egoistic trudges nervously along as Seo-eun directs him toward the intersection crosswalk, assuring him the enemy has been tagged. But as he notices the red traffic lights and decides to ignore them, Seo-eun suddenly shrieks a warning. He's about to be flattened by a speeding truck, and egoistic freezes in shock right in the middle of the road, realizing too late how catastrophic his luck really is. In a flashback, a band of mobsters jeer at their captive, sneering if he enjoyed running off with their stolen fortune. The prisoner, a much younger Hak Chol, dangles upside down by a rope, desperately pleading for his life and swearing he will repay every coin. Their boss smirks at the pitiful oath, lazily drawing on a cigarette with unimpressed eyes. He scoffs that money is worthless to him and casually presses the glowing ember to the rope. Hak shrieks in terror, begging them to stop, but the flame hungrily climbs until the cord snaps, hurling him straight into the dark waters below. With a final hopeless scream, his mouth stretched wide in fear, he plummets powerless toward his grim fate, until a sudden burst of energy erupts from the depths. The thugs stumble back as a radiant silhouette ascends where he fell. Stunned and bruised, Hak stares at his glowing hands shimmering with bizarre strength, while the crime boss barks for his men to seize him. They charge yet instantly freeze, sensing a suffocating heat radiating from the newly awakened teleporter. Hak grins, cracking his knuckles with mischievous satisfaction, boasting that no one alive can restrain him, before laughing madly and unleashing a brutal red shockwave that blasts his tormentors skyward. Still in the flashback, a cocky Hak teleports away, bragging gleefully that no soul can ever catch him. The memory fades into the present as a monstrous truck barrels down a highway, screeching to a halt inches from a bare-chested Hak, defiantly standing at the crosswalk. The startled driver shouts, while egoistic effortlessly blinks out of the truck's path, smirking as he escapes untouched. Hak mutters curses under his breath, furious that his timing barely worked, still failing to strike egoistic. Swearing bitterly, he teleports again, tumbling clumsily onto a balcony as egoistic watches from the street below. Clutching his ribs, Hak snarls with frustrated hatred, inwardly roaring that egoistic's narrow escapes have nothing to do with destiny. Meanwhile, egoistic, cheerful as a game show host with a gun, gleefully terrorizes passersby who whisper that he is an A-class villainous teleporter. Hak gazes in disbelief, slowly realizing that egoistic may in fact be a twisted hero who only delights in tormenting other criminals. From the rooftop, egoistic proclaims with theatrical bravado that rotten villains belong in the garbage and must be erased. He blinks back to the street, grandly calling his prey to crawl out of hiding, before smashing a devastating kick into the weakened Hak, proudly announcing he has captured a worthless piece of trash as his battered foe spits curses. Suddenly, a blonde woman is seized from behind. Confused and terrified, she wonders why she can still hear the villain's mocking voice. She shrieks as Hak cruelly uses her as a human shield, hurling her helplessly toward his opponent. Yet a purple-gloved hand intercepts her midair, gently pulling her into egoistic's arms. With cheeks reddened, the woman gazes upward, breathlessly affirming her rescuer's gallant save like a heroine in a cheesy romance drama. Defeated, Hak groans, blood dripping onto the ground as he squeezes his eyes shut, too broken to rise again, collapsing with a final thud as curious bystanders gather. Recognizing him as an A-rank teleporter, they whisper furiously, while egoistic, panting heavily, levels his gun at Hak, demanding to know if he admits his own crimes. Hak sneers, mocking that egoistic is also a villain, so why bother pretending to be righteous? Egoistic chuckles darkly, admitting he is, but claiming he is at least not as vile. Turning toward the restless crowd, he declares that the bleeding figure before them is a parasite who embezzled billions and murdered 4 innocents, someone's spouse, someone's father, someone's friend, and someone's son. He challenges the mob, asking if such a fiend deserves mercy, and the crowd erupts in rage, chanting for Hak's execution. Writhing in pain, Hak screams, demanding to know what difference exists between them and why egoistic dares to speak so high-handedly. Smirking coldly, egoistic reveals that Hak's crimes will one day multiply, that he will rise as an S-rank butcher slaughtering hundreds, and worst of all, he will endlessly torment Stardust. With crimson eyes gleaming, he informs Hak that he cannot allow that future. He mutters a sardonic apology, declaring Hak must perish by his hand. In an instant, the trigger is pulled, and Hak's blood splatters across the pavement as the crowd roars. Egoistic pauses, hearing strange cheers, baffled as he stares at their ecstatic faces, Shouldn't they be horrified that a man was just executed publicly? Their excitement leaves him silent, realizing once again that aside from the presence of superpowered beings, this bizarre world mirrors his old one, except its people treat killing as casually as clapping at a circus act. With a crooked grin, he doffs his hat and bows low, mockingly reminding them that he is a villain, and shouldn't they actually fear him? For the first time, their expressions twist into unease, but before Egoistic can deliver another sarcastic punchline, his eyes widen as Stardust suddenly rockets down from the sky, aiming straight for him like a furious meteor. Egoistic panics inwardly, wondering if he has pulled far too much aggro for his own good, when suddenly Stardust descends from the sky and slams into the pavement like a living meteor, flattening him in a heartbeat. Groaning dramatically, he peers up at her, realizing that even though she is usually a slightly blunt and ordinary college girl with unremarkable habits, the moment she puts on her hero face, she transforms into a strange hybrid of Shakespearean actress and clumsy knight from a historical drama, which only, to his annoyance, makes her look far more charming. She glares at him with fiery eyes, shouting and demanding to know what on earth he thinks he has done. He scratches his cheek, feigning innocence, and replies that he merely eliminated a malicious A-rank villain teleporter who murdered innocents and casually teleported into a bank to steal money, explaining smugly that he only carried out what any righteous hero ought to do. Stardust clenches her jaw and grinds her teeth in frustration, mocking his shameless boasting, but he continues to grin with reckless confidence, cheekily asking whether it is not legally possible for an A-rank villain to be subjected to summary judgment at the discretion of a hero in the first place. Her shoulders stiffen as she pauses, then she questions him sharply, asking if he even considers himself a hero at all. Egoistic, genuinely surprised, he chuckles awkwardly and admits flatly that he is a villain, though at that very instant, a mischievous idea strikes his head like lightning. Realizing dozens of citizens must be recording the scene with their phones, he sees the perfect opportunity to shift the spotlight onto Stardust and steal back some dramatic flair. With exaggerated flair, he begins clapping his hands slowly, as though starting an overly theatrical opera, announcing loudly that the great Stardust has finally arrived, further declaring that a private vendetta carried out by a rogue villain like himself is a violation of established law. He claims he deeply respects her noble and stubborn sense of justice, and therefore, in recognition of her iron principles, he will reluctantly withdraw for the day. The spectators stare at him wide-eyed, whispering in disbelief, muttering that villains should only be apprehended by official heroes. Some snicker that Stardust appeared only after everything had already ended, while others mock her, saying she failed to capture the teleporter and questioning aloud what exactly this villain Egoistic did wrong if he had already finished the job. Egoistic freezes, realizing with horror that his brilliant scheme is backfiring faster than a broken toaster. At that moment, Seowun's furious voice screeches in his earpiece, demanding to know why he is behaving like a buffoon and ordering him to return to base immediately. Sweating bullets, Egoistic abruptly breaks into a ridiculous jig, waving his arms while shouting loudly that he is still 100% a villain, that he has no delusions of being good, and he will absolutely continue his wicked deeds, challenging Stardust to catch him if she dares. In a flash of red light, he teleports away, vanishing from the stage, leaving her standing silently with Hawk's bloodied corpse at her feet. As the disappointed crowd disperses, Stardust remains alone, staring down at the fallen villain with sorrow clouding her expression, her hands trembling as she kneels beside him. Meanwhile, Egoistic reappears back at the underground base, collapsing to the floor with a heavy thud. So-eun immediately rushes to him, her eyes widening with alarm, calling out frantically for Soo-bin. Shaking nervously, Soo-bin rushes over, her whole body trembling as she asks what is happening while instinctively clutching his arm. Seo-won quickly explains that Egoistic is suffering from the backlash and side effects of his unstable teleportation ability. He writhes violently, shouting in agony, his voice echoing through the base. Together, the two women strain their muscles to drag him further inside, their feet slipping as they struggle with his dead weight. Suddenly, the muffled sound of a phone rings from Egoistic's pocket, interrupting the chaos. Sewon fishes it out, her jaw dropping as she sees the endless stream of notifications. Once again, Egoistic is trending and dominating the internet like a cursed celebrity. Far away, as the sky darkens, Stardust sits on the edge of a rooftop, her legs dangling as she scrolls through her phone with weary eyes. Her lips quiver with frustration, her face glowing with sadness, as she feels utterly isolated, burdened with hopelessness, and trapped in a world where she can neither protect others nor protect her own heart. The scene shifts to a shadowy, rain-drenched alleyway where 17-year-old Shinharu kneels in the downpour, screaming desperately for her mother and father as she clutches their lifeless bodies, trembling and soaked. In her small hands, she clings to a weathered book torn from the victims, while a man nearby remarks coldly that her parents should have simply surrendered it. A hooded figure with a vicious smile presses a pistol against her temple, telling her to curse her foolish parents for resisting. Tears stream down her face, yet her sorrow suddenly twists into a glare of fierce, unyielding hatred that makes the man hesitate, pausing silently with a cigarette smoldering between his lips. With a cruel grin, he mockingly offers her the cigarette, asking if she isn't lucky to still be breathing, before tossing it at her face and sauntering away without a care. Shin, burning with grief, smashes her fists into the puddles, sobbing as she drags herself toward her parents' bodies. Clutching them tightly, she laments her weakness, mourning that she was too powerless to defend them, and in that moment, she silently vows with trembling lips to never allow such helplessness again. The rain continues hammering the fractured alley, thunder echoing like a cruel laugh. Suddenly, a radiant pillar of golden light crashes down from the heavens, enveloping her in its brilliance. Shin gasps in shock as the blinding glow expands outward, illuminating an entire city block with dazzling force. Her soaked black hair shimmers before transforming into radiant blonde, her hidden powers finally erupting awake as sparks of divine energy dance along her skin. The scene then transitions to an empty corridor inside the Ego Stream headquarters, where Egoistic lies sprawled, groaning in misery while clutching his forehead as though it might split. Seo-on suddenly bursts in, hands gripping her head as she screams with frantic excitement. He startles at her sudden appearance, blinking in confusion, only for her to start laughing uncontrollably while shoving her glowing phone toward him and insisting he read as he eats. Egoistic frowns, baffled by her manic joy, but begins scrolling through the screen. To his horror, the article lists his so-called accomplishments: the A-rank villain Egoistic, who defeated Rhino, an A-rank brute, then even toppled the infamous S-rank monster and Zodiac, who staged a live-stream dilemma at the observatory just to entertain bored Koreans, who crushed a terrorist plot led by his own henchmen, paid off hostages like a discount Santa Claus, and finally annihilated the dreaded A-rank teleporter. The Hero Association itself comments that he is absurdly difficult to apprehend, and to their disbelief, they admit they are no longer even sure if he qualifies as a villain. Egoistic nearly chokes, flailing in panic before blurting out the one question on his mind: what about Stardust? Seo-on, instantly irritated, sighs heavily, scolding him for obsessing over her yet again, but reluctantly directs his eyes to the comments below. There he finds endless comparisons, people openly declaring that Egoistic is better than Stardust, and disturbingly, they are not even joking. They mock her lack of accomplishments while crowning him as a king god who has already taken down 3 A-rank villains, while she, in their words, has barely contributed anything to the nation. Egoistic stares blankly at the screen, completely dumbfounded, his soul leaving his body at the thought that somehow, despite his antics, he is now trending as a public favorite, which might actually be the scariest thing of all. Egoistic's jaw practically unhinges in disbelief, still baffled as to why the public despises Stardust, guessing it might be because she remains the least active among the trio of A-rank heroes, while Shadow Walker or Icicles routinely rescue dozens, even hundreds, single-handedly, and she hasn't reached anywhere near that level yet. He bluntly asks Seo if this is truly the consensus, and she confirms it without hesitation, even adding that he now has an official fan cafe, which makes his eyes bulge wider. Overcome with outrage, he leaps about furiously until, in a sudden burst, he teleports from his bed, declaring to both girls that he cannot let this insult pass and that it is officially time to orchestrate the next grand-scale terror stunt, boldly asking if they are willing to participate. Seo reels in disbelief, demanding to know why again, while Lee stands equally stunned that he has shamelessly dragged her into his antics too. Yet Egoistic appears almost thrilled, proclaiming that the citizens of Korea deserve a demonstration of what a genuine villain resembles and who the true hero actually is, promising Stardust directly that he will shove her right back into the spotlight. Meanwhile, Stardust herself lounges peacefully, savoring a mango frappe, until her eyes widen at cherry blossoms drifting gracefully down, their beauty colliding with cruel remarks she recalls from the public. Realizing with a pang that people seem far more exhilarated by Egoistic demolishing villains than by heroes mercifully sparing them, despite her always trying her absolute best. So why do they shower her with such disdain? She gives herself a quick slap, urging her mind to focus, only to be interrupted when a girl approaches, cheerfully requesting advice. It's Chae-hun, lightly tapping her cheeks and encouraging her to loosen up. Stardust's lips curl into a small smile, admitting her senior is correct and that she hadn't even noticed the blossoms blooming, when suddenly Chae-hun mischievously asks if she wants to witness something even funnier, explaining that it's a wildly trendy thing she assumed Stardust hadn't seen yet. With a grin, she reveals a silly video of a mango dancing, the official Egoistic fan cafe meme, asking Stardust if she finds it amusing and confessing that the rogue troublemaker has strangely grown on her too. Stardust clenches her teeth so hard they practically squeak, appalled that even her senior is siding with him, but Chae-hun suddenly gasps in shock, shoving her phone closer, revealing that Egoistic is broadcasting live at that very moment. Stardust freezes, staring as her commander's urgent message announces that the villain is once again targeting her specifically, commanding her immediate return to headquarters and instant deployment. Stardust abruptly rises, slamming the table so hard it rattles the teacups, shouting her senior's name and hurriedly apologizing as she insists something urgent has come up, before bolting off at blinding speed, muttering fiercely that he must wait because this time she will absolutely capture him. Meanwhile, Egoistic is broadcasting live from a desolate, eerie location, casually greeting his viewers with a smug grin, remarking that it has been quite a while since they last saw him, before deciding to glance at the scrolling comments, only to flinch when he realizes the crowd appears disturbingly thrilled, as though he is their quirky best friend. Muttering in disbelief, he shakes his head, ranting that he has recently overheard far too much chatter, labeling him a charming hero, even noting that he somehow ended up with a fan cafe, but he warns the audience that they are gravely mistaken. With a gleam in his eye, he swivels the camera to reveal a woman bound helplessly on the railway track, followed by several more victims nearby, proudly declaring that this display is proof he is a villain through and through. Calmly, he explains that a speeding crane is rapidly approaching, sparking panic in the chat, and he slyly addresses Stardust directly, wondering aloud if she is watching him. Scrolling further, he stumbles upon a cheeky comment accusing him of being Stardust's simp, which makes him laugh before clarifying the rules of his cruel game. Don't pull the lever, one life is saved, but 5 will perish. Pull the lever, and one person dies for many. Either way, tragedy is inevitable. He warns her not to get clever, sneering that if she tries dragging people off the tracks, the train will derail, as his ally Lee is already hacking the system, tying up the actual operator. He insists she only has a single choice, which is to pull the lever, when suddenly he hears her voice shouting in defiance, fueling his excitement as he spots her vaulting down dramatically into the scene. Stardust scans the bound victims, realizing in horror that saving them would doom the passengers on board, and with clenched fists she squeezes her eyes shut, straining her mind desperately for a way to rescue everyone. Egoistic's laughter echoes like thunder as he crows that the infamous Pentakill Express is roaring closer, mockingly asking her what she intends to decide. The comment section erupts in hysteria, spamming pleas that she must pull the lever, but Egoistic smirks knowingly, thinking it is exactly what people expect, while certain deep down that she would never make such a choice. As the train barrels nearer, one girl strapped to the tracks shrieks in terror that she is about to die, when suddenly, Stardust propels herself forward in a dazzling leap, closing the distance to the rushing train with blazing determination. Egoistic quickly mutes his mic, turning to Soo Bin with a calm voice, assuring her not to panic since none of this is aimed at her, urging her to just keep working, though she trembles and insists in panic that she will try. Switching his mic back on, Egoistic suddenly freezes, staring downward in sheer confusion as he struggles to comprehend what Stardust is attempting. His eyes widen in horror when he realizes she is actually bracing herself to stop the roaring train with nothing but her bare hands. Shouting in disbelief, he yells at her, demanding to know what madness she is pulling, calling it outright suicide. The train's headlights clash with her frame in a thunderous explosion of light and force, the impact reverberating through the air. Grunting with ferocious effort, Stardust drives her heels deep into the soaked ground, muscles quivering as she pushes back against the unstoppable momentum, her jaw locked tight in raw determination. Through ragged breaths, she vows that all she needs to do is hold on. The train wheels screech, steel shrieking as sparks erupt, fighting savagely against her miraculous strength. Yet as she strains with everything she has, a dreadful thought pierces her mind. Why does it feel as though the machine is accelerating instead of slowing? Egoistic, drenched in sweat, stares with one eye unblinking at the impossible sight, his usual smirk shattered, while even his partner collapses nearby in terror, too shaken to stand. He desperately tries to rouse her, his voice breaking, but his gaze remains locked in disbelief, silently admitting that never, not even once, did he ever imagine Stardust could truly stand her ground against a runaway train.